All right, we're in Leviticus chapter 6, looking at verses 1 through 7. The first question, what sins are addressed in this passage? I'll read verses 2 and 3. If anyone sins and is unfaithful to the Lord by deceiving his neighbor about something entrusted to him, or left in his care, or stolen, or if he cheats, or if he finds lost property and lies about it, or if he swears falsely, or if he commits any such sin that people may do. And the sins talked about here are sins where we are taking from someone else. We are stealing, we are deceitfully gaining by taking from another individual. The next question, what are some modern examples of how we can commit similar sins? Well, of course, the normal way, we can do the same thing. We can steal things, we can lie about something, we can cheat. One way that I think Christians are often guilty of this is in times when we're bargaining for something, like with a car or some other means of obtaining something where the price isn't fixed. If we're seeking to obtain that thing, going beyond what is fair and trying to seek an advantage over the individual, exploiting the individual that's making the sale, or if we ourselves are selling something and we're trying to get the highest price for ourselves to the disadvantage of the other individual, I think that comes in the category of these kinds of sins. Sometimes we're tempted to think, oh, we need to just get the best price for us, and we need to seek our own gain, and that's okay before God. I think that comes under this category of sin. That's stealing, that's exploitation of another one of God's children, which goes into the next question, who was the trespass or unfaithfulness against? Well, the verse says very plainly, if anyone sins and is unfaithful to the Lord by deceiving his neighbor, etc. This is an unfaithfulness, a trespass, a sin, not just against the individual, but a sin against God. The next question, why do you think this is? Well, there are many reasons that were mentioned in our study, but one reason I do want to mention here is that the idea that the person that we are doing this against is a creation of God. Proverbs 14:31 says, he who oppresses the poor shows contempt for his maker. The fact that the reason it's so terrible of a sin to oppress the poor is because it's showing contempt for the one who made him, recognizing that God is the creator of all, and any sin against any human, any other individual, is seen by God as an offense against him, just as I would see it as an offense against me if someone were to harm or oppress or wrongfully treat one of my children. This is the way God views each individual as precious in his sight. And if we're exploiting, if we're taking advantage of, another way we can commit this sin is just by stealing from the reputation of another individual. If we're saying things that are hurtful or negative or trying to tear down an individual, even if the things are true, if we're doing this, we're stealing from their reputation. We're taking away from the good name or the good face that they may have. And I believe that also is a way in principle that this applies. But again, recognizing that this is not just a sin against that individual, it is also seen, and primarily here, seen as a sin against God. We see this principle stated, someone mentioned in our study in Genesis, where Joseph says he cannot do this great sin, in the sin with Potiphar's wife tempting him to sleep with her. He cannot do this great thing and sin against God. Not just a sin against Potiphar, but this wickedness would have been a sin against God. David also, after sinning with Bathsheba and then killing her husband, yes, it was a sin against Uriah. Yes, it was a sin against Bathsheba, but also he says in Psalms 51, this thing I have done again is against you only, O Lord. Against you have I sinned. And we need to see our sins against other individuals in this light. If we are taking advantage of others for our personal gain, if we are criticizing and stealing from the reputation of others, we are sinning against God. The next question, in addition to the offering, that's the offering for God, what was required to receive forgiveness from God? Yes, it's a sin against God, and so we have to make it right before God. But in addition to that, in verse 5, it says, the latter part of the verse, he must make restitution in full, add a fifth of the value to it, and give it all to the owner on the day he presents his guilt offering. When we come to make that peace with God, come to be reconciled with God, also, we need to make sure that we're making it good, we're making it even, but not only even, going beyond that and adding the fifth to the individual whom we have stolen from. That's a part of it. We can't have the forgiveness and reconciliation with God if we are not willing to go through this and make it good and make put forth our best effort to be reconciled to the individual that we have stolen from. And even in the example I gave of taking and stealing from someone's reputation by criticizing them, by speaking negatively, even if it's true about them, I think we can do this by, yes, talking to those individuals or the people who before whom we've torn apart this person's character, or torn apart this person's reputation. We can go back to those same individuals and acknowledge our wrong and say, yes, that person may have these faults, even if they are true. And in many cases, we may be exaggerating them, but even if they are true, we can also add the fifth by highlighting the good traits of character, highlighting the good things about that person. There is no creature of God, no human being that doesn't have some virtue, something positive that we can celebrate. And I think we can add the fifth by talking about those things and highlighting those things before the same people before whom we have criticized this individual, and add to, in the same example of this principle here. The last question, how were these principles demonstrated in Luke 19, verses 1 through 10? That's the story of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus, the tax collector, had cheated, exploited many individuals. And Zacchaeus understood this principle. Not only did he see it as important to be reconciled to Jesus, not only did he see it as important to have Jesus come into his home and make his peace with God, he also saw it as important. He said to Jesus, I'm selling half of what I have and giving it to the poor. And if I have exploited anyone, I'm also going to make good. And he says, give them 4 times what I've taken from them. Zacchaeus recognized, and then Jesus says, today salvation has come to this home. Not just repairing the vertical relationship, as important as that is, also seeking to do as much as he could to repair the horizontal relationship that he had damaged. So hopefully this is instructive for us in our personal relationships, recognizing each person is precious in the sight of their maker and treating them as such. And where we fall from that, where we don't reach that high ideal, trying to make up for it, trying to do what we can to make restitution, and even adding the fifth, and also making sure that we do that as we also seek the reconciliation with God.